This is your brain. This is the Super Mario Galaxy movie. This is your brain on the Super Mario Galaxy movie. Any questions?
GameCube.
So I watched the Super Mario Galaxy movie, and it reminded me of a quote from Malcolm in the Middle, where the kid goes, "I expect nothing, and I'm still let down." So right off the bat, I want to make clear that this review is going to be spoiler-free-ish. I'm going to be alluding to big stuff that happens in the movie without directly naming them outright. Aside from one particular use of a licensed song that I just have to mention for a very specific reason. But if you absolutely want to know nothing about the movie going in beyond what was seen in the trailers, why did you click on this video in the first place, honestly? If you really want to see the movie for yourself and you haven't done so, then yeah, you should probably just go and see it before you watch this video. If you've already seen it, or you simply just don't care, then let's talk. Also, forgive me for not actually showing any clips or screenshots from the movie. Illumination and Universal really do not like playing nice when it comes to fair use. So you're just gonna see footage from the actual game instead, which I would argue is the better experience personally, but that's at your own discretion. So yeah, if you could tell by my general tone and just the title of the video, I did not like this movie very much. But before I go into why, I should probably give you my quick thoughts on the first Super Mario Bros. Movie. So back when I was still making unscripted videos on my main channel, I put out a really rambly, now unlisted review of the first movie. If you want to watch it, I'll leave a link to it in the description. And I gave it a really glowing recommendation. I talked about how it not only brought out the little boy in me more and more as the movie continued, but I also said it was such a solid love letter to Mario as a franchise that I not only said it was my favorite video game movie of all time, but also the best movie that Illumination had ever made, which those opinions have since changed ever since I made that review. In terms of video game movies, it has since been topped by Sonic the Hedgehog 3. I think they not only did an excellent job expanding that version of the Sonic universe, but I also didn't think it was dragged down by any filler and actually told a really compelling story that really did justice to all the characters in the movie, both the Sonic characters and the original characters, while also still remaining super fun and action-packed. And as far as Illumination movies are considered, I mean, quite frankly, in hindsight, I would probably say that the first Despicable Me is the better movie. Say what you want about that franchise now, but back when it came out in 2010, it was a pretty fresh and fun animated movie that I felt did a good job appealing to children and adults alike. I think of a lot of the jokes in that movie, and I think they still hold up pretty decently, and it actually had a narrative that was pretty engaging to sit through. Also, the movie had Vector, and every movie should have Vector. That is just an objective fact. Now notice how I said that both of those movies had compelling stories. That is something that the Mario movie just does not have, which I think I was fine enough with at the time because of not only the novelty of seeing a big budget Mario movie on the big screen that actually was faithful to the franchise for a change, but also because it was the first one and they kept it pretty basic in terms of the structure. I was able to excuse a lot of it, but I definitely do think I let my love for Mario as a franchise cloud my judgment a little bit too much, honestly. I gave the movie an 8 out of 10 on my Letterboxd, but in hindsight, I would probably move it down to a 7 or even a 6. I'd still need to rewatch it in order to properly confirm that, and I would still say it was a worthwhile watch, but it is a much more safe and by-the-numbers movie that I think I wasn't willing to admit at the time. But hey, that's where a sequel could easily improve on things. By upping the action, expanding on the world and characters a bit more, and just continuing to push the envelope on what you can do with Mario as a franchise. I think the executives thought it was opposite day when I sent them that feedback in an email. I was honestly extremely cautious about the Super Mario Galaxy movie right from the word go. Because as soon as the title dropped in that Nintendo Direct, and I saw it was the Super Mario Galaxy movie, I was immediately hit with a huge red flag. And I'm saying this as someone who absolutely adores Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. I haven't pinned down my list of my favorite games of all time yet, but I'm pretty confident in saying that they would probably be in my top 20. I love those games more than I love of most of my family members. But it's the fact that we were making this jump to such a grand scope so soon that made me feel like the movie was gonna be crushed by ambition. You teased Yoshi in the post-credits of the first movie, so my assumption was just gonna be, yeah, they would just do a Super Mario World movie. Travel to exotic places outside of the Mushroom Kingdom with Yoshi? Where do I sign? Going the Galaxy route made me think they were going to do way too much with this movie and failed to deliver on a lot of that ambition. And the trailers really didn't do anything to ease my mind. Everything I saw from the first two trailers, since I didn't even bother seeing the final one because I was just like, I'm just gonna watch the movie at that point. But everything I saw from the first two trailers either felt like it was doing the same thing as the first movie, just with shallower writing, or it does do new things, but they do the bare minimum with them. When the review scores came out, I saw a lot of people complaining about how the critics were being way too out of line with those scores. And they're right. They weren't being harsh enough. Now, I'm not gonna act like this movie is like a huge disaster or anything. There were definitely some redeeming aspects about it. I actually think the first act was pretty decent. The opening scene with Rosalina and the Lumas is pretty compelling to watch, with some stellar action against the Mega Leg. I think the way they bring in Yoshi is really cute, basically making him act like a scared lost boy and getting really excited when someone actually appreciates him. And there were some particularly nice character moments, such as Luigi being a scaredy cat when they go inside the pyramid, and Mario and Peach having a nice conversation about where they stand as people. I also really liked the scenes throughout the movie where Bowser and Bowser Jr. are just having fun father and son bonding moments. There's a flashback scene with Bowser Jr. as a baby, which was honestly my favorite part of the movie, just because it actually got me to care about the turtles in a really cute, funny, loving way. In general, I also just think Bowser Jr. was handled pretty dang well here. He has decent motivations, a fun personality, and I really didn't mind Benny Safdie's take on the character. Yeah, he doesn't really sound like the character, but none of the celebrities sound like the actual characters, and I think he did a decent job giving his own portrayal of Bowser Jr. With Yoshi being my favorite Mario character, I think Donald Glover did a pretty convincing job as the guy, and overall his appearances in the movie were pretty dang fun. I like that Luigi actually had screen time in this movie compared to the first one. Fox McCloud was absolutely not necessary in the movie at all, but considering that they did shove him in, I don't know, I actually really liked what they did with him here. Glenn Powell gave a fun performance for him. I like the attitude that they gave him and what they did for his opening monologue. And he got the most laughs out of me out of any of the characters. It would generally make me interested to see what they would do with a Star Fox movie. The animation is really beautiful to look at, but then again, what big budget anime movie doesn't these days? The orchestrated music is as great as it's ever been. There's a lot less licensed music compared to the first movie. And I like how they explicitly say in the credits that no one is allowed to use the movie to train for AI. That's a big W for them. Although they also list P. Diddy's name in the credits because one of the licensed songs they used is Hypnotized by Biggie, so the dub has been lost. Alright, now let's get into the bad. If I could describe this movie in a single sentence, it would be all style, no substance. Which I was willing to let slide for the most part with the first movie, because it didn't really have ambitions to be anything more than that. This movie does, because we are adapting Super Mario Galaxy here, the mainline Mario game that arguably has the highest stakes out of any of the other mainline entries, with the grand scale of space and a narrative that, while isn't a huge narrative, is still much more than most other Mario games are doing. And as an adaptation of Galaxy, it fails really badly because it tries to do so many things beyond the Mario Galaxy aspects that when they do have the time to focus on something from Galaxy, they do it in such a shallow and dull way that I'm surprised they even bothered trying to adapt Galaxy in the first place. Yeah, Rosalina, the character that defines Super Mario Galaxy, to the point where she's been almost every single Mario game since then? Yeah, barely in the movie. After the first 15 minutes, you barely see her again, and when you do see her, she's given absolutely nothing to do. And they also completely retcon her really compelling compelling backstory from the first game and replace it with a new one that is worse in basically every way and is completely nonsensical, tying it with another character that she had no real interactions with in the actual games, and she doesn't even see until the end of the movie. Rosalina is easily my favorite of the Mario princesses, and they turned a 5-star steakhouse meal into a Jack-in-the-Box dish. And you do not want to be like a Jack-in-the-Box dish. Anything else that references Galaxy usually comes down to the Lumas, which were used fine enough, the musical leitmotifs, which are used fine enough, and maybe like 2 or 3 galaxies from the actual games that they do absolutely nothing with. They go to Honey Hive for like 3 minutes to see the Honey Queen, and then you never see them again. Otherwise, outside the Comet Observatory, the executives basically see Galaxy as they set in space, therefore. So not only has the novelty of seeing a big budget Mario movie on the big screen completely worn off on me, and they don't even bother to try and represent Galaxy in an interesting way, I'm left with zero choice but to treat this as just a normal movie. And as a normal movie, it still does nothing for me because there is no cohesion after the first act. They pretend to give characters interesting arcs that'll help them grow as people, but they're completely shafted to the wayside just to give more leeway towards the next action set piece that not only has no cohesion with the rest of the movie, but purely exists to get fans to point and pog at what they're seeing. Mario and Luigi are babies now and have to get away from a giant dinosaur because Yoshi's Island. Peach and Toad encounter a wart and have to fight off a bunch of ninjas because remember Super Mario Bros. 2? There was a part where Rainbow Road was name dropped in a normal sentence and I literally had to recoil in my chair out of disgust. The first movie worked with its references because they weren't shoved in your face and they usually led to actually serving a purpose in the story. Most of the time in this movie, I think they just shoved a reference in there just to try and get me hyped in my seat. And when your product is more known for its hype rather than the actual quality of it, that is a really disturbing sign. I would be a lot more lenient about all this if the movie either actually took its time to flesh out its characters more and not just cram it into a 90-minute runtime, or B, actually made the movie more funny. But honestly, I was pretty deadpan for most of the run. I'd get a laugh every once in a while. Like I said, I liked a lot of the stuff with Fox in it, and the Bowser and Bowser Jr. stuff was pretty fun. But ultimately, I think what made a lot of the humor in the first movie work so well for me was due to the performances of Bowser and Donkey Kong. Jack Black and Seth Rogen, respectively, were easily my favorite parts of the original movie because of how much energy they brought to their performances while also having some pretty fun dialogue. But the fact that Bowser is shrunken down for the first half of the movie makes his attempts at humor feel more sad than they are amusing, and Donkey Kong just not being in the movie at all just removes a lot of that fun factor for me, which I'm sure they are working on a standalone Donkey Kong movie, which that honestly might be a fun watch for me. But without that stuff and having to rely on a character from another video game franchise to do some of the heavy lifting, definitely made this far less memorable for me as a result. That and there's also no musical number in this one, so yeah, they dropped the ball with Bowser real hard. And while the action set pieces are fun enough, I can't bring myself to care about them because I can't bring myself to care about the characters or the story. And on that note, you might be saying, it's Mario. The games don't have big grand stories in them. Why are you expecting a big story out of a Mario movie? Because it is a movie and you aren't able to interact with it, so you can't get away with not having any stakes. And even if I pushed away the critic side of my brain in order to make room for the likes to have fun side of my brain, because this isn't a video game that I can play, it just feels like I'm watching a Let's Play of a Mario game with the most shallow, risk-free commentary. So it's not like I'm getting much value out of that. And look, I know someone's gonna try and go into the comments to be like, it's a kid's movie. Why are you expecting a grander tale out of a kid's movie? Because I have seen grander tales come out of kids' movies. Very recently, in fact. Look at Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Look at The Boy and the Heron. Look at K-pop Demon Hunters. Those are movies that were clearly made with kids in mind, but tell stories that are so freaking engaging and have insanely clever writing and characters that actually grow as people. And I respect those movies a ton for that, especially The Boy and the Heron. That movie is one of my favorites of all time. I don't think there's anything wrong with kids enjoying the Super Mario Galaxy movie. I know if I was a little kid, I would have loved this. I just don't think we should be making excuses as to why this movie couldn't be better just because the main demographic is 6-year-olds. Why bother? Maybe someday I'll be in a position where I have to watch this movie again, and now that I know what to expect from it, maybe I'll be able to see it for what it is and be able to enjoy it a little bit more. If you love this movie, the last thing that I want to do is take that away from you. Quite frankly, unless you're so anti-art that you think this film is worse than AI, or you have such a huge ego complex that you unironically look down on others for enjoying a harmless family flick, or you're an anti-woke chud that likes to pretend that Hollywood is failing children because they're not teaching them that women should submit to men or that gay people should be abolished, I really couldn't care less about what you think about this movie. If anything, I would much rather people find genuine joy out of something that I couldn't get into than for them to be on the same wavelength as me. All I ask is that if you genuinely do love this movie, I encourage you, if you haven't already, to sort of expand your palette when it comes to the world of animation, because there are so many masterpieces out there that aren't gonna get the same amount of media attention as Mario is. I know that Shea Frillis has been recommending more obscure anime movies at the end of his mainstream reviews now, and hey, why not? I don't know when I'm ever gonna talk about a movie again on here, so I'm gonna throw in a recommendation myself. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. Maybe this isn't that obscure of a pick because this was nominated for Best Animated Feature at the Oscars in 2023, but I never heard anyone talking about it even during that run, at least not in the circles that I know. And it is acclaimed enough that it's earned itself a spot on the Letterboxd Top 500, but please shut up, okay? Let me just talk about one of my favorite movies. Marcel the Shell is based off of a series of short films and follows a shell named Marcel, with his grandmother Connie, living in an Airbnb together after their family mysteriously disappeared one day. And eventually a documentarian named Dean finds them and basically records their everyday life and has fun interactions with them in the hopes that one day they will get enough attention to be able to find their family. This film has such a unique style of presentation, not only blending animation and live action incredibly well, but with the majority of the filming work being done through Dean's own home camera, it makes the film feel much more like a homey vlog and makes the experience feel much more personal as a result. The interactions are so wholesome and tug at the heartstrings incredibly well, on top of just being really freaking funny with such a dry, sarcastic sense of humor that genuinely stuns me when I hear some of the stuff that comes out of the little shell's mouth. It's paced really well, it has tons of cool visual gags, and it also delivers a really strong message about performative activism versus actual activism without being shoved in your face. This is an example of an excellent family film that's appealing to both kids and adults alike. It means the world to me, and I would love it if more people checked it out. I give it a 10 out of 10. It is the best movie about a shell with shoes on ever made. Oh yeah, and the Super Mario Galaxy movie is a 3 out of 10 in case you are wondering. Give Shy Guy his own movie, cowards. He is without flaw, and his role as a protagonist doing literally anything would make a movie at minimum an 8 out of 10. And that's being generous, it would be closer to an 11. Shy Guy says so, dang it. God bless and have a good one. Bye bye.